Hey, read through the word. Today is September 10th. Today I'm calling this lesson His Story. There is a lot of reading today. Our readings are in Daniel. We've got Ezra. You got our good guy Haggai, and there's just so much here. And goodness, it was just a hard thing to get my brain to where we need to stay. And I'm just remembering I forgot to tell you stuff yesterday because I was going to reference things. So this is out of place, but I'm going to put it in right here so you'll know about Zerubbabel. I mentioned the other day I was going to tell you about Zerubbabel and why he has a special place in my heart. So I'm going to tell you this story. As you see, I am a nerd. I've been a nerd my whole life. I mean, I didn't embrace it, but I've always liked learning. Never did I see me teaching the Bible. Never did I see me teach in school. It was just not on my radar. I just like learning, but I don't know. But I have an ability to hold on to information, and I'm good with timelines, so maps and timelines and stuff like that. So all of that's just a little bit about me as I was growing up. My students ask me right now about when I got bad grades. I'm like, what do you mean bad grades? No way. That wouldn't have happened to me. I said, I'm still traumatized by getting my name written on the board when I was in 7th grade. So, that's just me. I'm the rule follower and all of those things. But it's just very interesting to see how God works things. And I know I'm trying to think if this goes in this lesson or I'm going to go ahead and tell the story. So when I have no problems telling you my age. I'll be 49 in October. And so when I was in my early 30s, and it was about the time I met Wendy. Wendy and I have known each other for a long time. About the time I met her, I'd been through Bible studies and stuff, but I had the opportunity to go to a Sunday school class by a man who was starting a new class, and they needed people to go to the class and start it. So we went to hear him teach a lesson, or he came in our class to teach a lesson, and then he was going to start a new class. And we went, and his lesson was on Zerubbabel. I've been in the church, so I'm in my early 30s at that point, been in church my entire life, and had never heard of Zerubbabel, which tells you how much reading in my Bible I have been doing. So, I didn't know, and I was just fascinated that he was able to teach something in a way that got me, I need to learn. I need to dig. I need to open the Bible. There's a whole lot more stuff in here I didn't know. And, more than just Sunday school stories. And so Zerubbabel is what really launched me, is the person that launched me. And that Sunday school teacher actually was called into ministry and is now my pastor, has been my pastor for 15 years now. But, so it's a good story I always tell about my pastor, but it's a good story of that moment in a class, of why I teach and what one moment in one class can do for one person. Because it changed my life, that lesson. And so that Zerubbabel and these lessons like this, you just never know what God's going to do with a lesson. Being on the teaching end of it, that things hit me, or on the receiving end of it, as, I tell y'all all the time, when I teach, there's so many things that hit me as I teach them, that lesson was probably not even for you. It was for me. And I did that the other week with Lamentations, and that lesson was for me. And probably there's a lesson earlier this week that was for me too. And so it's just the joy of being a Bible teacher. But all of that was, I told you, because it's so, this is going to take that and put it into why all this, his story, history, the nerdiness of me. History is his story. Everything in history is his story. And it says, so what you have right here is this vision of Daniel. So we're closing out Daniel, and you have Daniel's chapters 10, 11, and 12. And there's so many things that we could do with this. But I particularly like this section because it's something that has historically happened, and we can see the hand of God at work in life. So in your notes today are going to be a list of kings and list of things, and I'm going to help you connect it right now because I want you to see what what's doing. So I'm trying to think. Oh, you're old, I talked about. So you see, Daniel also gives us references to know that what's going on at home. So Daniel and Ezra overlapping as far as we're reading in chronological order. We see, hey, they had stopped building on the temple. So back and forth. I really like that we get to see that. But his story, history, Galatians says it this way: in the fullness of time, God brought forth his son to be born of a virgin under the law. And I think this vision of Daniel helps us see how God orchestrates all of time and space to bring Jesus. And of what God's doing throughout world history, and the people never even saw it. Daniel saw the vision, and then as things are going, it just looked like chaos to the people it was happening to. So I want to give this to us. As you constantly hear me say, you're like, Lisa, you're a broken record. There's certain things I say all the time, and I'm going to keep going back to this. That we do not know what God is doing right now. Our Sunday school classes at my church started back in person this week, and I teach Sunday school. And I told my class, I said, we do not know what God is doing with this time, but I hope what we're seeing is a refining of the church, a refining of the believer to get us on mission. And I want us to see, by looking at times that have happened before, of just how big God is. So you're going to see in your list, so I want to help you with some of these kings for us to see, because what you're told is we have this vision. Well, the vision is actually taking us through a group of people. We're going to go from Persians to Greeks to Ptolemies to the Seleucids, which I think there's a different way to say that, but we're going to go with it. It's for us to see that's what's going on in this section of Daniel. And I'm going to help and tell you what he's talking about. So the Persian kings. Now, we know our guy Cyrus. We've talked about Cyrus. Cyrus reigned from 559 to 530 BC. Now, I skipped some of the kings in the list just because I'm trying to pick ones I can reference and you'll go, oh yeah, I know him. So the next king of record that comes up is from 522 to 586 BC is King Darius the First, which Ezra just referenced. That, remember I said there's Darius the Mede, and then there's Darius the Persian. Different guy. And when you get into Esther, you're going to need to know that because it gets a little confusing. Okay, this Darius is the one who is defeated by the Athenians, the Greeks, at Marathon. So you have world powers that are working at the time. Remember, we went from Assyria to Babylon, from Babylon to Persia, and now we're going to go as Persia goes to Greece, and Greece is going to take over. But before we get there, let's talk about a couple other kings. From 486 to 465 BC, all of these dates are going to be written down for you, is King Xerxes. We know him as Ahasuerus in the book of Esther. King Xerxes. He is defeated by the Athenians at Salamis, which is why he's in such a bad mood when you get to the beginning of Esther. That's why he's holding the banquet, to make himself feel better, because he's just lost a big a big battle to the Greeks. And so that's why you get the opening to Esther that you do, is because of what he's gone through. Then you have from 465 to 424 BC is Artaxerxes. Artaxerxes is the king of Nehemiah. And then, so all of that happens, and then so now you've got, now the Persians are slowly losing control, and they will finally lose all control in 327 BC to Alexander the Great. So Alexander takes over all of Persia, the entire Persian Empire, before he's the age of 30. So here's the thing. Alexander dies really young, and a lot of this stuff is stuff I would normally cover when I teach the intertestamental period between Old Testament and New Testament. And we might still do that one day, and I'll go into a little bit more detail. Right now I'm doing the fast one because I've got a time limit on me right now. But so it goes from the Persians to the Greeks, and when Alexander, he dies so young, his area is divided into 4 different ways. Thankfully, we're just going to talk about 2 of them. We're not going to have to talk about all of them, because I want you to remember these names, because they're going to pop up, and they might be names you know from history, because we're looking at his story. How even though all of this is not, all of these battles, all of this, Alexander the Great by name is not in the Bible, but everything he does is referenced here in Daniel, and the aftermath effects are what lead us to the New Testament, and what gives us a Greek New Testament, and that's a different story. But when we look at all that, it really does matter that God's hand is at work in history throughout all time for his purposes. So as we're seeing this, the 2 people I want you to remember are what Daniel calls the king of the north and the king of the south. The king of the north are the Seleucids, like I told you earlier. They're in Syria. And then there's the kings of the south in Egypt. Those people are called the Ptolemies. Starts with a P. Ptolemies. The Ptolemies. There are no actually Egyptians in control of Egypt for probably 1,000 years or so at this point. The Ptolemies are Greeks. They are placed in control of Egypt. The most famous of the Ptolemies is Cleopatra. And then Cleopatra has some run-ins with some other of Alexander's people, and Mark Antony, and then Mark Antony puts a guy named Herod on a throne. So we'll talk about that later. But see how none of that is written in the Bible, but all of it's already been referenced in Daniel 10 through 12. All of it. So, and then what you'll see is the Ptolemies and all the control going on around in Egypt, and then who's actually going to take control of the land of, well, at that point, no. As Judah goes back, is the Seleucid dynasty is going to take over, and there's a guy named Antiochus Epiphanes, Antiochus the Fourth, who is going to persecute the Jews. He's going to defile the temple, and actually what he does is what leads us to the holiday of Hanukkah, which Jesus himself celebrated, and you see that in the book of John. But I want us to see that all of these people and all of these groups persecuted the Jews. They went through some horrible things, and we'll see that when we get to the New Testament and the Romans with the Christians. But I want us to see that in these chapters that might not make much sense to us, that God's hand is at work, and that he knows what he's doing, even when it looks like chaos and confusion to us. He knows what he's doing. Do we believe that? I told my Sunday school class that, so, where the rubber hits the road, where your theology and your reality meet, you can say one thing all the time. Your theology is one thing, but reality, do you live it? Do you live like you really do believe what you say you believe? And part of that is understanding how God's hand is at work throughout history. All that history you thought really didn't matter when you were in school. That's God. That's God at work. God is at work to make two things happen. Well, up until the creation and Genesis 3:15, up until the cross, everything was headed to the cross. Everything since then has been an overflow from the cross. What has happened? But the ones who are persecuted, whether it was the Jews then, whether it's going to be the Christians in the New Testament, whether it's whatever happens in the coming days to the church in the world, God is in control. He will overcome his enemies at last. That's what Daniel tells us. He will overcome his enemies. That what our job is to stay faithful to the calling he's placed on us as Christians to build his kingdom. We build his kingdom. He puts his enemies under his feet. I want to be faithful in that. I do. I want to be known for building the kingdom of God. So I equip myself. I sit under people who teach, and I teach others so that we are equipped and we are ready to do what God wants us to do, and then we let him take control of history and do what he will, and we'll stay faithful to the call he's placed on us. I'll see you next time on Read Through the Word.